Hello everyone, Happy New Year. We're starting the year off with a very hard but a very important case. Today's case is a scary one because it has to do with international child abduction by a parent who no longer has custody of the child. It's something that needs to be talked about more when it comes to DV situations that involve children, and it's a case that definitely has not gotten enough coverage. So we're going to try to change that today. Tatianna Cuevas was born August 18th of 2012 to her mother Kristen Allen and her father John Cuevas. Now Kristen and John's relationship would start on some very strange terms that would end up escalating to both verbal and emotional abuse that would eventually lead to a very heated custody battle for Tatianna. In a Facebook post written by Kristen in 2021, she would say, quote, "He told me his name was Carlos. He was a single sports manager and 26 at the time. Needless to say, he lied. He was a 32-year-old optometrist named John. Those who know what else he lied about. None of them are small things. The problem started after I found out the lies. And by then, my daughter was conceived. There was no choice. During the first year of her life, I was in a car accident and put Tatianna in daycare so I could go to physio. That's when he started saying he thought it would be best for him to take care of her, using excuses such as how will I go back to school or how will you work. He made me feel guilty for putting her in daycare, so I removed her. He had access and exercised it often, but he didn't believe it was enough. His suggestions turned into blackmail, and he started withholding her from me. There was a total of 3 times, the longest being 3 weeks that he's taken her, and I've not known where she was, to the point of having CAS involved. Before July 29th of 2018, there were years of traumatic events with this man. I believe that being quiet would be better than speaking out, but now I'm here, and silence is deadly." End quote. Despite all of that, Kristen would end up inviting Carlos to Tatiana's first birthday. And during the party, he would end up serving her with court papers. This paperwork detailed a non-removal order, which was a response to Kristen asking Carlos if she could take Tatianna out of the country to her grandfather's funeral in Antigua. And because she ended up being denied this, Kristen ended up having to leave Tatianna with Carlos so that she could go to her grandfather's funeral. And when she returned, Carlos would end up refusing to give their daughter to her unless Kristen gave him full custody in writing. This was just an absolutely horrible situation. In August of 2017, when Tatianna was around 5 years old, Kristen had finally been awarded full custody of their daughter, and the two were living in Brampton, Ontario, a city northwest of Toronto. John was said to be living in the nearby city of Kitchener. And despite John having a history of withholding Tatianna to punish Kristen, which led to emergency orders to get her back, John would still be allowed to take their daughter out of the country if he followed certain rules, including providing his plans and what they were going to be doing and where they were going to be going, a timeline of sorts. And Kristen also had to provide consent. Kristen saying, quote, "He had a history of taking my daughter on separate occasions and withholding her. He's taken her and said, unless you sign over custody, I'm not returning her. I've had to have emergency orders to get her back." End quote. Now, for one reason or another, I'm not exactly sure why, Kristen would end up giving John permission to take their daughter out of the country. On July 29th of 2018, Kristen would end up providing consent for a now 39-year-old John to take Tatianna on vacation to France and Germany. And as I said, he legally had to provide a very detailed itinerary of their trip in order for them to be able to go, which he did. And I can't imagine how hard it must have been for Kristen to allow her daughter to go on this trip. But Kristen would end up signing those papers with the understanding that John would return back to Canada with their daughter by August 12th. And as you can see by these text messages, the only thing she was really asking for was for their daughter to call her every country they were in to say hello and to just follow up. But when August 12th came and went with no sign of John or Tatianna returning to Canada, Kristen's worst fears began. 2 days later, on August 14th, Tatianna would be reported missing to the Peel Regional Police. But it wouldn't be until August 21st, which was just 3 days after Tatianna's 6th birthday, that a Canada-wide warrant for John's arrest would finally be issued after he failed to follow the court orders. Just weeks too long, in my opinion, for no one to know where these two were. Hell, what if something had happened to them while they were traveling? Maybe foul play happened to them while they were traveling, and it seemed like no one was truly searching in those initial days. Unless I'm wrong, and there was searching going on and it just isn't public knowledge. But once police did begin investigating, we would learn that there was no foul play in those initial days, and that Tatianna and her father John were alive and well. And they were doing a lot of traveling that wasn't in that itinerary. Because between July 29th and August 4th, Tatianna and her father would be spotted in places like Paris, France, Budapest, Hungary, Dubai, and then Nigeria. Then on August 4th, Tatianna and her father would be spotted on surveillance video at the airport in Togo, West Africa. This would be the last reported sighting of the two. Now, for some reason or another, this little girl's disappearance has hardly gotten any coverage over the years. Now, I'm not sure if that's because she was last in the custody of her father despite him not having full custody of her anymore. And as someone who is literally from the area where this little girl and her family are from, I had never heard of this case before, which is ridiculous to me. I only learned about this case after I was, researching into different cases to cover, and she's been missing for 7 years. And the fact that I live in the area where she is from and still haven't heard about it, who's to say then that, people across the world are going to know about this? The Canadian media and the police need to do better about spreading the word on these cases. And the fact that she disappeared across the world is even more concerning because she could be anywhere now. Anything could happen to her, which is terrifying. There is such little information as to where John and Tatianna were last seen, how they were last seen. I have never seen the surveillance footage released, that's very important, I think. To see what she may have last actually been wearing, to see if, John dyed his hair, if he had a mustache or not. You know what I mean? There's these little details that we don't know. Which direction did they go after leaving the airport? Have they made any purchases since then? There is just such little information. But again, this is a Canadian case, so I am not that surprised that there isn't that much information being released. But it is still frustrating because how are we supposed to know and how are we supposed to help with these cases and to look out for these people if we don't know information on these cases? Do the police or any authorities out there have any information that they just haven't released after they left that airport? Could they have been spotted somewhere else or made another purchase and they're just not releasing that? Or did they just disappear into thin air after leaving that airport? Because if that's so, that's even more concerning because could they have been met by foul play after leaving the airport? Does John have any experience being in Togo? Does he know anyone there? Or is he just winging all of this and just ran there thinking, okay, this is a pretty, obscure country that no one's really going to find us in? But as the years have passed, is it possible that they're still in Togo hiding out somewhere, maybe in a small village or somewhere where, social media isn't as readily accessible? And so the chances of recognizing Tatianna now that she is older are going to be less and less. She would be around 12 to 13 years old now. She's going to be a teenager soon. And the fact that, everyone out there is looking for a 5-year-old still isn't going to be helpful. She could look very much so different than the 5-year-old that went missing. And so if he was hiding her out somewhere there for all of these years, he could now go out maybe more so in public and no one's going to recognize her. She may not even know that she's missing, which is a really scary thought. He could have taken her there and said that her mother died or that her mother didn't want her anymore or that they were just going on vacation and the vacation just continued to go on and on and on. I've covered another case before where a boy was taken by his mother across the world. And it wasn't until he was much, much older that he finally escaped and he left. And when he was found, they realized he was a missing boy. I'm really holding out hope that something like that will happen with Tatianna, that maybe she doesn't know she's a missing child, and eventually as she gets older, she will find out and she will also be able to escape and leave. John is known to use the names Juan as well as Carlos and would often call Tatianna Bibi or Bijou. Since their sighting in Togo, there has been no publicly known leads or financial trails indicating where John or Tatianna may be. Multiple police forces, such as Peel Regional Police, RCMP, and Interpol, along with Global Affairs Canada and several charitable children's organizations, are said to have worked tirelessly to find Tatianna and bring her home. But again, despite those claims of them all helping to find her, where's the media coverage? And I say all of that because despite all of these authoritative organizations apparently looking for her, I still don't think that police are taking her disappearance as seriously as they should. And that's because in a 2019 news article, Constable Sarah Patton of the Peel Regional Police said, quote, "We're not at this point necessarily concerned for the safety of the child. We're just trying to locate them now and confirm whether they're safe." End quote. So it does really seem like since she was taken by her father, police aren't as concerned. But it's been 7 or more years now, and she still hasn't been located. So how safe could she really be? What are police doing? In the year 2020, Kristen would reach out to Premier Doug Ford asking for help. However, the response she would end up getting is that the Ministry of the Solicitor General has no direct authority to direct police in their day-to-day operations, and, quote, does not have a mandate to investigate any situation or to direct an investigation by an outside agency, end quote. They then recommended that she contact the local authorities or the Law Society Referral Service, which she already has, clearly. She was just trying to get more help and more awareness, which the police aren't doing. And Kristen has been very outspoken about her feelings on this situation. She has continued to ask everyone to share her daughter's story, her face, her name, in hopes that it will get to someone out there that will spot them, saying, quote, I ask this to be shared to raise awareness for those who have been in an abusive relationship, for those who have been abducted by a parent in a tumultuous relationship, and for those left behind picking up the pieces of their life. I believe that someone knows where my daughter is, and she will be found. I continue to have hope. I really want everyone to add their individuality to the same cause. If you could assist in any way to help find my daughter and bring her back home to Brampton, Ontario, I would be extremely humbled. There is no amount of time that could pass that would make you being gone easier or acceptable to anyone. Your disappearance has left family, friends, and members of the community with sorrow, and the only remedy is to have you returned. There may be distance between us, but the love we're connected by will never fade. End quote. In 2020, Kristen also posted about how a year prior, she had been told by Global Affairs that they were waiting to hear back from Togo on whether Tatianna or John had exited the country, but she still didn't have an update at that point. And I haven't seen her post on there since about if she ever did get that update. She was also continuing to ask the police to spread the word through the media, but was still not getting any help or assistance. I can't imagine spending years of your child's life begging the police to give you custody because this parent is unfit. And then to have that same parent kidnap your child and the police still say that it's basically fine because that's her father. It's insane. It truly is. Especially if the court said that he wasn't supposed to have the custody and then, he went against the court orders and then the police were like, well, he went against court orders, we need to find him now, but then they're also still not worried for her safety because it's her father. Just because it's her father doesn't mean he won't hurt her. It's ridiculous to think otherwise because there are an endless amount of cases of fathers hurting their children and vice versa, mothers hurting their children. There are family annihilators for a reason. And there are multiple examples and cases of one parent killing their child to get back at the other parent. So the fact that this isn't being taken seriously is a disgrace in my opinion. And the fact that this isn't being talked about more is also a disgrace. There's a serious issue here. In my opinion, there are two scenarios here. Either John took Tatianna to West Africa and they're still out there maybe living somewhere in a village that might not have a lot of news media or social media and just no one recognizes her now at this point because she is older and they're just out there living somewhere. Or there's also the possibility that he continued somewhere else and they're out there somewhere in the world. I think the other possibility is that foul play may have come to them after leaving that airport and they are no longer out there, which is obviously the worst case scenario. It's something we obviously don't want, but it makes me wonder, again, do police have more information as to what happened to them after leaving that airport? If they don't, that's more concerning to me than anything. I am truly hoping that Tatianna is out there somewhere and that this will end in a positive story one day. Possibly she will get old enough and she will catch wind that she is a missing child and she will be able to come forward and escape. I truly hope for Kristen and her other children and her family's sakes that they will eventually get answers and that Tatianna will come home one day. And on top of that, I hope John, Carlos, whatever he is calling himself nowadays, gets justice here too, because he does not just deserve a slap on the wrist for this. He deserves some serious jail time for all of this, and he needs to be shown that he can't just do whatever the hell he wants. This is a man capable of some very dangerous things, in my opinion. If he is willing to kidnap his own child and be hiding out all of these years somewhere, who's to say he won't do it to someone else? But I think those two situations may be a reason why they haven't been spotted since then. But what do you all think? I'll be in the comment section chatting with you all. Let's take one more good look at both Tatianna and John, just in case they could be spotted out there. When Tatianna disappeared, she was described as a black female standing 4 feet tall, around 80 pounds, with a thin build, brown shoulder-length curly hair, and brown eyes. She has a small circular birthmark on her lower left back. This is how she may look now that she is older. John was born June 22nd of 1979 and is described as a multiracial male, standing 5'8" tall, around 160 pounds, with a light complexion, short black hair, brown eyes, and possibly a chin strap goatee. He uses aliases including John Vargas, Dr. John Vargas, optometrist by trade, Carlos Cuevas, John Vargas Cuevas, and John Cuevas. He calls Tatianna Bibi as well as Bijou, and may introduce her as such. This is an important case to share no matter where you live, because they could be anywhere in the world. This is a case that needs to see the eyes of many, many countries. So no matter where you live, please share this out. Please share out Tatianna and John's missing persons flyers. If you're able to translate their missing persons flyers and share them out there, please do so as well. I have seen there have been some that have been translated, because again, they may be out there and people may know them, but they just don't know that they're missing people because they don't read English. They may not know English. And this case is being obviously shared in English, and so here we are. I think this is a solvable case. I just think it's not getting enough coverage. But again, we can't be looking for a missing 5-year-old. Tatiana's not a little girl anymore. She's growing older. And so that is who we need to be looking for. And we need to continue talking about this case, because as she gets older, she may end up getting social media and she may figuring out that she is a missing child. But if we stop talking about it, it's going to get buried in, the news media and in social media. And it's not going to continue to be out there when she finally does get on the internet. This is a little girl who loved her mother and has now spent years without her. And it's heartbreaking. So again, if you're able to share this out, please do. Let's start this new year out by helping this family. If anyone has any information or may think they know where Tatianna or John is, I'll leave the information down below to contact the authorities. Again, my heart goes out to Kristen and her family. I truly hope this year brings answers. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.